A series of mysterious deaths and disappearances plague a once thriving fishing port off the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska, causing the entire town to be abandoned. Welcome to another tale of grim events. If you like true tales of the macabre, strange, and paranormal, then please click on the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you can know when another tale of grim events is uploaded. Without further ado, let's get into today's story. What happened in Portlock, Alaska? Portlock, Alaska, also known as Port Chatham, is located on the southernmost tip of the Kenai Peninsula. It's one of the most beautiful areas in all of Alaska, but it is very remote. You can only get there by boat or bush plane. The town of Portlock was founded in 1786, supposedly by Captain Nathaniel Portlock of the Royal Navy. However, there is belief that Captain Portlock opted to bypass this area known as Portlock for a far more favorable location 15 to 20 miles away. Regardless of the history, it wasn't until the early 1900s that commercial fishermen built a cannery on Portlock. By 1921, the town's fishing economy was doing so well that the U.S. government believed that Portlock would be the next major commercial fishing hub, so they established a post office there. Everything seemed to be going well for Portlock until the 1930s. That's when rumors began spreading around the Kenai Peninsula that something was very wrong in Portlock. Men had begun going missing from Portlock at an alarming rate. Most were never found. The few that were found dead and mutilated at a nearby lagoon. At first, it was thought this could be bear attacks. However, the natives in the area, known as the Alutiiq, heard of these men that went missing, and they came to the people of Portlock to tell them that this was no bear, that it is in fact a creature that they call the Nantinuk, which translates to half man, half beast, or the hairy man. Supposedly a creature that closely resembles a Bigfoot or Sasquatch as we know it. So let's talk a little bit about these men that went missing and the men that were found dead and mutilated. In 1931, a man named Andrew Camlock had went out logging, and he was later found with his head smashed in. Apparently, a huge piece of logging equipment was the murder weapon. But there's something a little odd about that. This was no ordinary piece of equipment. This was a heavy piece of equipment that no man could lift on his own. And it was also found at least 10 yards away from his body. So something or someone was miraculously able to pick up this huge piece of equipment and smash him over the head with it. And he was just the first in a series of strange deaths. Men from the cannery would reportedly go up to the hills to hunt sheep and bear, but would never return. Worse yet, sometimes stories would circulate about mutilated bodies that were swept down into the lagoon, torn and dismembered in a way that bears could not do. Tales were told of villagers tracking moose over soft ground. They would find giant man-like tracks over 18 inches in length closing up upon these moose, and the signs of a short struggle where the grass had been matted down, then only the tracks of the man-like animal departing towards the high, fog-shrouded mountains. Now, one interesting thing is about the trees. People began complaining that trees were being uprooted by some unknown force, and some of these trees were even replanted in the ground upside down. That's not something a man could do. A man could not rip these trees out of the ground and then miraculously replant them upside down. Another disturbing incident was when a party of bow hunters happened across a houseboat which had become stuck in the banks of the Yukon River, having drifted from further upstream. The exterior of the vessel was covered in what appeared to be blood, and when the men had cautiously entered, they found its owner dying in the depths of the boat's interior. Between his dying breaths, he was briefly able to relate to the terrified hunters what had happened to him and how powerless he had been to stop his own murder. The dying Petka explained he had been residing inside the cabin one evening when he heard an unnatural howling sound coming from somewhere nearby. Dressing and arming himself, he exited his home to find a monstrous, fur-covered figure slowly approaching his craft, shouting in a threatening voice and confrontational manner. He raised his rifle to fire, but the creature had attacked with enormous speed, casually swatting the weapon away and smashing the helpless Petko repeatedly against the hull of his boat. By the 1940s, fear had entirely gripped the people of Portlock, and many of them fled en masse for safer areas, leaving behind their homes, their possessions, everything. The last man standing in Portlock was the postmaster until the post office was officially closed in 1951. Despite having been completely abandoned, sightings of the mysterious creatures in and around the vicinity of Portlock have persisted. Local newspapers reported that in 1968, a goat hunter claimed to have been chased out of the derelict town by a terrifying creature that had stalked him through the countryside for several days before trying to trap and eat him. In 1990, an ambulance technician in Anchorage related the story of how he had been sent to the city's Eagle River jail to treat a 70-year-old native inmate who had suffered a suspected heart attack. As the two men had been chatting, the Alouette detainee had mentioned that he had been born and raised in the town of Port Graham. The conversation had eventually progressed onto the subject of the nearby Port Chatham or Portlock, at which point the paramedic had asked the prisoner if he believed in any of the stories of the monsters that had allegedly lived there. At this, the man suddenly sat bolt upright, his eyes full of fear. He explained to the emergency worker how in August of 1973, he and two of the members of his tribe had gone hunting at one of the upper lagoons in nearby Dogfish Bay. One evening after dinner of broiled salmon, which they had caught on earlier that day, they had retired to their sleeping bags, only to be woken by the sounds of someone moving around immediately outside of their tent. As the three men had nervously reached for their weapons, they could hear the sounds of loud footfalls, walking in a steady, deliberately manner circling the tent. This was accompanied by heavy breathing and the sound of noises of someone apparently handling the pots and pans they had left outside from the metal. It then slowly receded, heading back into the forest. When they ventured outside the following morning, they discovered that the remains of the cooked salmon were gone, along with several of their food containers. Unnaturally large footprints, which were also found pressed deep into the mud around the tent, resembled that of a man, but were huge. The next 2 evenings, the hunters ensured that they left the remains of their evening meal in plain sight, with the unknown visitor again returning on both occasions to relieve them of it. When the paramedic asked if this could not have simply been a bear, his patient was adamant it was not. The intruder had made no threatening sounds or gestures, or any attempt to interfere with the tent, despite knowing that men were inside. Their visitor, he claimed, had been the Nanticoke. Only the fact that he had treated it with deference and respect had saved their lives. To this day, Port Chatham sits completely abandoned and empty. All that remains is a small building, some broken debris, and rumors. People don't often visit this area. It is still considered far, far too dangerous for people to go. And the people that do go are there because they want to find out for themselves that the stories are true. There are several documentaries and books written about Portlock and Port Chatham and things that had happened here. I will leave some links down in the description below if you guys want to take a look at any of those. So what do you guys think? Do you believe that it's truly a Sasquatch that is terrorizing the woods around Portlock, Alaska? Or is it just rumors and fairy tales and people simply left the town for greener pastures? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Have a great day.